In the summer of 1340, the ocean itself seemed to declare war on England. Across the narrow channel, a monster lay in waiting. It was the Great Army of the Sea, a colossal French armada of over 200 ships, a floating city of 20,000 men, steel and malice. They had gathered at the mouth of the Zwin estuary with a single, terrifying purpose: to invade England and extinguish its kingdom before the 100 Years' War could truly begin. To ensure no English ship could pass, the French admirals did something unprecedented. They ordered their ships to be lashed together with heavy iron chains and thick cables. They built a castle on the water, a 3-mile-wide wall of wood and iron, bristling with crossbows and men-at-arms. It was an impassable fortress. It was a display of absolute arrogant power. But on that day, they made one catastrophic mistake. They forgot that the sea is not the land. They forgot that a fortress that cannot move is just a tomb. This is the story of how an English king, with a hole in his thigh and the sun at his back, gambled his crown, his life and his nation on a single afternoon, and turned the sea red with the blood of an entire navy. To understand the rage that fueled this battle, you have to look back 2 years. Since 1338, the French Navy hadn't just been fighting a war, they had been orchestrating a campaign of terror. Fast, oared galleys, manned by Genoese mercenaries and French sailors, had descended on the English coast like wolves. Portsmouth was burned to the ground. Southampton was sacked, its people slaughtered in the streets while they attended Sunday Mass. Hastings and Plymouth followed. The English Channel, once a moat, had become a highway for raiders. But the deepest cut was the loss of the Christopher. She was the pride of Edward's navy, a massive, great cog armed with the latest, terrifying technology: gunpowder cannons. The French had captured her, killed her crew, and now, adding supreme insult to injury, she sat at the very front of the French line at Sluys, flying the French flag, a trophy, a taunt. For King Edward III, this was personal. His treasury was empty, his allies were wavering. His councillors begged him not to sail, warning him the French fleet was too large, the odds suicidal. Edward's response was the cold fury of a Plantagenet. He told them, "I shall cross the sea, and those who are afraid may stay at home." He scraped together every ship he could find, merchant cogs, transport vessels, anything that could float. He packed them with his most deadly export, the English longbowmen. June 23rd, 1340. The English fleet arrives. What they see stops the breath in their throats. The Zwin estuary is choked with masts. The French have arranged their 200 ships in 3 distinct lines, stretching across the harbour mouth. And they are chained. To the French Grand Constable, Nicolas Béhuchet, this formation is genius. Béhuchet is a lawyer, not a sailor. He sees a battlefield to be organized, lines to be held. He believes the chains will allow his troops to flow from ship to ship like soldiers on a rampart. But there is one man who knows better. Pietro Barbavera, the veteran commander of the Genoese galleys, looks at the chained ships and sees a death trap. He knows that in the narrow, silted waters of the estuary, a ship that cannot move is a sitting duck. He pleads with the French commanders, "Put to sea! Break the chains! If you stay here, the English will box you in." Béhuchet sneers at him. He calls the mercenary a coward. The chains stay. The trap is set. But the French have trapped themselves. The next morning, June 24th, Edward makes his move, but he doesn't attack. He sails away. To the French, watching from their chained decks, it looks like cowardice. They jeer and sound their trumpets, but Edward isn't retreating. He is waiting. He is watching the sky and the water. At 3 p.m., the universe aligns. The tide turns, flooding into the estuary with massive force. The wind shifts, blowing directly on shore. And the sun dips just enough to shine directly into the faces of the French. Edward orders the helm over. The English fleet swings around. Wind, tide, and sun are now at their backs. The retreat was a feint. The executioner has arrived. Edward has organized his fleet into deadly triads, 2 ships packed with archers for every 1 ship of men-at-arms. As the English cogs surge forward on the tide, the battle doesn't begin with a clash of swords. It begins with a massacre. The air turns black. The English longbowmen, firing 12 arrows a minute, unleash a storm that the Genoese crossbowmen simply cannot match. On the chained French ships, there is nowhere to run. The decks become slaughterhouses. Men in armor are pinned to the wood. Sailors dive overboard in sheer panic, choosing to drown rather than face the hail of bodkin points. Then comes the impact. The English cogs crash into the French line. Grappling hooks fly. The first target is the Christopher. The English want their ship back. The fighting is savage. This is a land battle fought on rotting wood. There is no quarter, no ransom, just the hacking of axes and the thrust of swords in the cramped, blood-slicked confines of the deck. The Christopher is stormed, the French crew is cut down to a man, and in minutes the great ship is turned. English archers swarm up her rigging, and suddenly the French are being fired upon by their own trophy. King Edward is in the thick of it. He is no distant general, he is on the flagship, sword in hand. A French arrow, or perhaps a crossbow bolt, slams into his thigh. The blood runs down his leg, filling his boot. But he does not fall. He stands tall, a visible banner of courage for his men. And now, the horror of Béhuchet's plan becomes clear. The chains. As the English clear one ship, the French on the neighboring vessel can do nothing but watch and wait for their turn to die. They cannot maneuver, they cannot flee. The English move methodically down the line, dismantling the French Navy ship by ship, plank by plank. The slaughter lasts through the long summer twilight and into the night. By the time the moon rises, the great army of the sea is Driftwood. Barbavera, the Genoese mercenary who warned of this disaster, manages to cut his ships free and escape into the dark. He is the only one. The rest are dead or dying. As dawn breaks, the Flemish locals, allies of the English, come down to the shore. Any French sailor who managed to swim to land is met with a club. There is no mercy. The toll is staggering. Nearly 20,000 Frenchmen are dead. Admiral Quiré is butchered in the melee, and Nicolas Béhuchet, the lawyer who chained his fleet, he's captured alive. But Edward remembers the burning of Southampton. He remembers the civilians killed on his watch. He orders Béhuchet hauled up the mast of his own flagship and hanged, a grim warning to any who would threaten the shores of England. In Paris, the silence is deafening. The defeat is so total, so humiliating, that not a single courtier dares to tell King Philip VI. They fear for their lives. Finally, the court jester is pushed forward. He walks up to the king and says, "Our knights are much braver than the English." The king asks why. "Because," the jester replies, "the English do not dare to jump into the sea with all their armor on." It is only then that the king understands. His navy is gone. The Battle of Sluys didn't end the war. It would rage for another 100 years. But it decided where the war would be fought, not on English soil, but in France. It gave England the command of the Channel, a dominance that would eventually pave the way for the British Empire. It was a victory won by a king's gamble, a lawyer's arrogance, and the terrifying efficiency of the longbow. A contemporary monk wrote that if the fish in Sluys harbour could speak, they would speak French, because they had feasted so well on the defenders of France. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the brutal origins of the 100 Years' War, hit that like button and subscribe. We've got more forgotten battles, more strategic blunders, and more history that deserves to be remembered. Until next time.